Daily Show, where we address all of today's issues. Today, we're here to discuss the issue of the Chinese, from unwanted to model minority. With me are my esteemed guests, Professor of the Chinese Studies at Archbishop Mitty High School, and Michelle Sanfilippo from the New York Times. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
Well, give us a little bit of background about the Chinese and how they came to be.
Well, the Chinese first came here during the mid-1800s during the gold rush, where there was just waves of Chinese coming over here. And they mainly came to America to work. However, they were considered sojourners. They would work, and however, they would, once they earn enough money, they would go back to China and return to their families. However, they started facing oppression almost immediately along the way once they started working in the mines and the railroads.
And then there's the Chinese Exclusion Act. Don't forget about that, Professor.
Of course.
You did mention a little bit about the difficulties, but will you please add on to the difficulties the Chinese people faced in the U.S.?
Well, like Michelle referred to, the Chinese Exclusion Act, America banned all Chinese from immigrating to the U.S. after they achieved such success in the mines and the railroads. However, this Exclusion Act not only barred them from coming, it gave Americans the image of that the Chinese were unwanted.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Not only that, they face a lot of violence in the U.S. Like when they worked in the mines, there was that huge riot in Wyoming where white miners burned down an entire Chinese settlement. But we shouldn't also forget the oppression they faced.
With their skin color.
And the language.
They weren't allowed to vote or gain political office in the beginning.
I had no idea.
Yes.
So, despite these difficulties, how did they achieve success in the U.S. and become a model minority from being unwanted?
Well, they were very hardworking, I would have to say. Their parents pushed them to keep going, and they just wanted it more than any other minority groups. That's what I would have to say.
Goodness.
Michelle, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to disagree with you. I don't see this so much as a cultural aspect, but after you mentioned that they were hardworking. I feel like the Chinese were put on a path of success because not only were there Chinatowns to keep them culturally strong during the Exclusion Act, but after the Exclusion Act was over, the Chinese that started immigrating over were usually well-educated, meaning they had a path to success for their children. I don't think that necessarily they were more hardworking, it's just that the people that were coming over knew how to succeed.
And then they could push their kids through college.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yes.
Intense. Now let's turn it over to our on-field reporter, Victoria.
So do you think Chinese people are successful in America, and why?
I think from my experience in where I live, I would say yes.
Why?
Because I think that people from China, or most of the people who are from here are immigrants from China, and the standard of living in China, or at least the academic standard, is a lot higher. So when they emigrate to America, they pressure their kids to meet that standard, and so they study hard and they do all that stuff and become better students.
Thank you. Who do you think is the most successful in America out of the blacks, Mexicans, or Chinese, and why do you think?
Honestly, I feel Chinese people would be more successful in America, only because they don't have to deal with the stereotypes that African Americans and Mexican people do. With their skin color being lighter than the three, I have a feeling they'd be more lenient to get the job in a job interview. So.
Do you think the stereotype of them being smarter has anything to do with it?
Definitely. You don't really assume an African American who lives in LA to be smarter than a Chinese person who lives somewhere else, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. What race do you think is the most successful in America, besides whites?
Well, either Asian or Indian.
Yeah. Okay. And why so?
I think like their culture makes like them like push their kids to be like grind it out in class and like try really hard academically to like succeed.
Yeah, they
further
focus
along.
more on like academics than well-rounded.
So why do you think Mexican families and black families don't focus on those kind of things?
I think they're more family oriented. So
Blacks and Mexicans are? So academics isn't as important to them?
Well, I'm half Hispanic, so on my Spanish side, like it's always like family first before school. So like I get that aspect, and on my mom's side it's white, so it's like education and athletics come before that.
Look at the class dynamics of black people and Mexican people in America. I mean, they've been exploited by the captain's classes. And I mean, you look at slavery. What was the color of slavery? Black people. You think that an entire race of people is going to be overcome in slavery in 200 years? No way. You look at Mexican people. They weren't even counted as a separate race until like 40 years ago. I mean, they lack identity as far as the U.S. government and the establishment goes. So you're going to have to overcome that. You're going to have to overcome the prejudices that are found in capitalism for make a stand about that.
Why do you think Chinese people haven't gone through that?
I think Chinese people have gone through that. However, if you look where they're found more on the West Coast, and it's different from the more sort of established areas of the East and the South. I mean, you had those places were colonized long before the West was, and I mean they faced racism, but it wasn't as ingrained as say slavery and that sort of thing.
Do you think Chinese people are successful by today's standards, and why?
Yes, because they are. There's a lot of them going to college.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you.
Well, okay. Why do you think that more Chinese people are going to college other than blacks or Mexicans?
Well, I believe that in their culture, they work harder. They're taught to work harder than we are. It's not that they're naturally smarter. It's just I don't work as hard as them. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think their parents push them harder.
Yeah, but not all of them. Just like a good
majority.
Thanks, Victoria. So, how did you guys feel about those students' reactions and what they had to say?
Well, Andrew and I both can't believe. I mean, we know that some people think that they're all bad drivers, but that's just a stereotype. And their kids are being pushed harder in school. Well, all different ethnicities want their kids to succeed. So.
Wow, that is fascinating. Thank you so much to my amazing guests today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, you guys know the truth. And tune in next time when we're going to